minute as well. So Kelsey's got us recording.
Again, just let me know. It says, do you want to leave the meeting or are you good?
Please stay.
I'm here. You got me.
We will give it just 1 or 2 more minutes, and then we will get started. And we're going to be making some summer cocktails tonight.
I'm excited. These are some of my fave cocktails to show people.
Good.
I'm going to get water so that I look like I'm drinking something that's hydrating and appropriate for an adult, not an Ale-8 cherry at 6 o'clock
I do
at night.
see a couple of others who I see glasses in the picture, so good.
Yeah.
Is your beverage of choice bourbon is the question?
Of course.
Always. Always, always. I'm just trying not to sip too much before I make these cocktails for y'all, because then it could get real sloppy and nobody needs that in their life.
I feel like we should add a toast to the event somehow.
That's a good idea. A cardinal toast.
Yeah.
Who can sing the school song? Ready, go.
We're now live on Facebook. I'm going to go ahead and get us started with Beth singing. I'm joking.
Yes. Excuse.
So first of all, thank you all for joining us. My name is Amanda James. I'm a 2-time U of L grad. Kelsey Gooden, also a U of L grad, is helping behind the scenes tonight. But we are super excited for this event. We had Beth Burrows from Beam Suntory join us a while back for a Cocktails with Cardinals Derby edition. And when we were planning this Young Alumni Month that we've sort of dubbed this for our young alumni and our young alumni at heart, we knew we wanted to have her back. And especially with summer about to officially start, we knew we wanted to try some summer cocktails out. So she has put together a great menu for us. We're so excited to try out the different drinks. Before we get started, I am going to give a plug, and Kelsey just shared the link in the chat, but we do have some other events on deck for our Young Alumni Month this month. We have a trivia night next Wednesday night. If anyone is interested, it's U of L themed trivia. Sort of think like pub trivia. It won't be longer than an hour though. So bring your cocktail or your beer and join us for that. And then we also have an event where we're going to be talking about artificial intelligence and data science and how you can gain some of those skills if you don't have them, or just learn about them if you want to learn more. So that is on June 30th. So you can use the link in the chat to check that out. Again, we're on Facebook Live right now as well as Zoom. Beth is open to answering questions once we get going. So if you do have questions, please feel free to drop those in the chat and we'll share those with Beth throughout the evening. But otherwise, we are going to go ahead and get started. Kelsey will put it on speaker view so that Beth will be sort of the main person that is showing up throughout the evening. But you can also adjust that in the top right-hand corner of your Zoom window on your computer. But without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Beth Burrows, American Whiskey Ambassador from Beam Suntory, to tell us a little bit about herself and what she does, and then get us started on some cocktails.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. We've been planning this for a hot minute now, and I've been looking forward to it. So thank you all again for having me back. So yes, my name is Beth Burrows. I'm the American Whiskey Ambassador at Beam Suntory, which is a lot of words that essentially mean that I used to travel and spread the good word, and now I do it from my home. And it's a really fun job. I get to educate. I spend a lot of my time, learning, for sure, but I get to go out and talk about the brands that I love and the family that I love in the Beam family. We've been doing this for 225 years, if you can believe it. This year, we have been making whiskey within the Beam family. So I get to talk history, I get to talk science, all the things that I did not care about in school, I get to now care about in whiskey, which is great. I was a sports admin major, so people ask me how I got here. I don't know, y'all. I've been in bars for the majority of my life, in all honesty. I started in the hospitality industry when I was 7, and my parents owned a bar and restaurant in Western New York. And I moved to Kentucky to finish high school, went to the University of Louisville because it was the only school that felt like school was supposed to feel, like college really was. I just remember looking at my mom on campus and going, this is it. I had a couple full rides to a couple other places, and I turned them down to go to U of L. That's how much I absolutely thought that that's where I needed to be. And the years that I got to spend there were phenomenal. And I was working in hospitality all the way through that. And so it just kind of all fell together. I worked my way up through a bourbon bar here in Louisville, where I started as a server and I left as a general manager, and then I took this position. So I have been in this role, it'll be 4 years on July 11th. So I'm almost there. Very exciting. And like I said, it's changed a little bit over the last little bit in the world that we live in now. So I get to bring people cocktails, I get to bring education, I get to do all of these engaging things that I used to do on the road with folks from, you know, the comfort of our own homes, which is amazing. The fact that I'm able to do my job and continue to talk to people, like, technology is not my best friend, but by golly, is it cool. You know, it's really nice to have. I need to sit in on your AI chats because
yes, join us.
I may not understand it all, but whatever. So, but yeah, so that's what we're doing today. We're going to do cocktails with Cardinals, which is a super awesome way for us to talk about some of my favorite summer cocktails and bring them to you super easy. I like for things to look bougie and really intricate and not have to be on the back end. So we're going to learn how to do that today with a couple different cocktails. If we're ready, y'all ready? We'll get into that first one. Perfect. And you guys have gotten some ingredient lists. I hope that you've been able to pick some stuff up. If not, no big deal. Continue to sip your cocktail. Take a couple notes, even if they're just mental notes. Like I said, they're going to be pretty easy. So the first one we're going to do, we're going to build in the glass itself. And so I got this real fancy glass for our strawberry basil lemonade. And as I told some folks before, basil is out at the Kroger's that I went to. So we're making strawberry thyme lemonade today. But feel free, it's a great way to talk about it. You can put whatever you want in there: basil, thyme, rosemary, whatever you have fresh growing in your garden. Lavender, if you've got an overabundance of lavender, feel free to throw that in there. We were talking about simple syrups earlier. You can make a great lavender simple syrup for your lemonade as well. But today, like I said, we're going to make it look real fancy, but it's going to be super, super easy. So you want to have your glass, whether that be a mason jar, a regular pint glass, whatever you want to make that cocktail in. And the first thing that we're going to do is take Jim Beam Black. So this is 86 proof. It is our extra aged bourbon. So Jim Beam 4-year that most people are familiar with. It's going to be staying in that barrel for a bit longer. So it's going to have more of those vanilla notes, more of those char notes. So I'm talking like smoky campfire marshmallow goodness. And we are going to put 1.5 parts into our glass. So just 1.5, because we want this to be pretty sessionable, right? We don't want it to be overly boozy. This is going to be a sitting by, sitting by the pool, maybe sitting on the back porch, just an easy sipper throughout the day. We don't want it to be uber boozy. The next thing we're going to do, I made it fancy by putting it into this little container, but it's simply lemonade strawberry, y'all. I literally just opened a bottle, shook it up.
Very fancy.
It's so fancy. And I went ahead and put it directly in here. So that's what's in this little glass here, or this little jar here. Then I'm going to take my ice, and we were talking ice molds earlier. I have one that gives me these long, nice cubes. So I don't know if y'all can see in there. So I've got some nice long cubes, and I'm going to take a real fancy strawberry lemonade, and we're going to go right on top. And this is going to be about 4 to 5 parts, depending on how big your glass is. And you can always adjust the alcohol content to how much you have. Like if you're doing this in a smaller glass, maybe you want to go down to 1 part of your whiskey and then fill it the rest with your lemonade. Or if you've got a glass that's bigger than this, maybe you want to go up in that whiskey. All up to you. And then I have a little bit of fresh squeezed lemon juice. And I want to do that because this has been in a container. And even though it is pretty fresh, I want to have that little extra oomph of freshness. So I'm just going to do a little splash of my lemon in there. And so then I take my spoon, stir it up just a bit. And mind you, all of these have been in the fridge prior to this. So this cocktail doesn't necessarily need to be stirred for the chilling of it or the dilution of it. We don't need the dilution. Oh, sorry. Somebody tried to call me. That's not helpful. There we go. I thought it was on Do Not Disturb. Apologies, y'all. So put that in there all together. It's beautiful. It's going to be lovely, but we need to garnish it, right? So I told you all we were going to use some fresh thyme because that's what I have. So I'm just going to take a nice little stalk of thyme just like this, and I'm going to smack it around the glass until it's aromatic, because we're not putting it necessarily in the cocktail. We're not shaking it in the cocktail. we're going to trick our brains into thinking that there's time in there, because we're going to get the aromatic as we take that sip. So there's that guy right there. And then I have this pretty little lemon wheel. We'll put him right there. Put this in front. And then I've got my strawberry, and I've cut a little slit in the strawberry so I can put him right on front there. And then straw right behind the thyme. So every time I take a sip, I smell the thyme. And there you go. You've got your strawberry, what would have been basil, but is no longer basil now. It's thyme lemonade. Cheers.
That is beautiful. Cheers to that. I got my Cardinal cup over here.
Yes.
I have 2 questions about that. And if anyone does have questions, again, feel free to throw those in the chat and we will relay those to Beth. One is, so as you mentioned, they were out of basil, you went with thyme. As I am pretty, I'm a recipe follower. And so
Okay.
a lot of times I'm like, I don't know, I'm a little scared to experiment. Do you have any suggestions for people who might not, if they didn't see the basil and they're like, well, I can't make this now? What would your suggestion be just in general for those situations?
If you don't have basil, I mean, you can always look for the stuff that's already pre-done at Kroger. If you want to grow it, that's another way that you can always have fresh basil on hand. If you're making cocktails at home, not obviously for an abundance of people, you don't want to just take the plant down. But I would say the thyme is a great way to go. Rosemary is another great avenue to go down. Honestly, if you want to know if it's going to go well, make the cocktail without the garnish and take the garnish to the side, take a sip, and then smell the garnish and decide if it's something that's going to go together. Because, if you don't try it out, you don't really know if your palate is going to like it. And as we talked about before, you're not putting it in the cocktail to taste it so much, but you're tricking your mind with that aromatic. So if you don't like the way that it smells, like some people just don't like thyme or they don't like dill, which wouldn't work in this, but, just taking a different one. But because you don't know what you're going to like, you've got to go through the experimentation of trying. So if you don't want to put it in there, if you don't want to ruin the cocktail without knowing, then you can just kind of do a side by side. That's what I
love that. And I had no idea about the aromatics, that like you're not even putting it in, you're just sort of getting that scent and smell. That's awesome. My other question on that is, we talked about prior, but we talked about that being something good to share around like the pool or on a patio or, your social distancing nights outside. Would you do anything differently if you were making like a picture of that, or would it really just be the same and just upping your quantities?
If you want to make it super easy, because it'll hold really well when you put it in the fridge, it'll hold for about a week. What I would do is take 2 to 3 bottles of your lemonade, the Simply lemonade that you choose. So the normal ones, not the big gallons. If you do, obviously adjust for the amount. And then 1 bottle of Jim Beam Black. So if you put that Jim Beam Black in, then you put your lemonade in on top. Make sure that you squeeze, I would squeeze maybe 3 to 4 like full lemons in there on top. And then stir it all together. Put an ice bag in there or like an ice block that's going to dilute slowly. You don't want to put a whole bunch of little ice cubes in there. Then you're just going to get watered down drink, and that's not what you want.
Yep.
So if you have little ice cubes, that's totally fine. Put them into like a sandwich baggie and then seal it up real tight and let them float in there, almost like a little ice pack. And then it chills, but it's not going to dilute down because, you're already diluting it quite a bit because this cocktail is a little bit of whiskey and a lot of the mixer. So understanding that balance and keeping that balance. Taste, decide if you want it. Have some extra lemonade. I promise it's delicious on its own too. So if you have a little extra, you can keep it in the fridge, but just dump it in there until it's exactly how you want it. Or, if you've got some people that maybe don't consume alcohol a lot or don't consume whiskey a lot, you maybe want to make it a little bit more palatable for them. So you're going to use less of the whiskey. Or if you've got people that have done quarantine the way that I've done quarantine, you might want to up it just a little bit so that they can taste the alcohol in there. But yeah, that would be my suggestion if you're doing it for like a pitcher or like a punch bowl.
And that one could easily too be a mocktail, right? Like you could just do like the lemonade and the lemon and jazz it up and all that.
Yep. And then it looks fancy. People, a lot of times my friends typically don't tell people in the beginning. So they want something that looks like they're, consuming along with others and they don't have to explain themselves. And you can always just dress it up real fancy. Like I said, this one's just in a cute little glass. I think I got it at like Target for $3 and it's adorable and I love it. And it's a great vessel and it's thick as well. So it's going to hold the chill of the cocktail. And if it's in my hands or I have this pedestal down here to hold it, Just think about that too. If you're using a thinner glass, the more you hold it or the more it sits and sweats, the more you're going to dilute it down.
Pro tip right there. Definitely a pro tip. A couple people said mint might be good for that one as well. I think that's a good.
Yes,
a
definitely.
good
Sage could go in there too. And
yep.
you've got different ones. You can do your regular lemonade, and then you have a whole lot that you can do because so much goes with lemon.
Yeah.
They've got the blueberry lemonade, so you can go in that direction.
Awesome. Well, I think that sounds delicious. I am ready for this next one if you are too.
I am. So I'm actually going to switch it up, and we're going to go Boulevardier, and then we'll finish with the paper plane if you guys are cool with that.
Yeah.
All right. So Boulevardier typically would go in a coupe glass like this guy right here. But because we're talking summer cocktails, I want to go ahead and put it in a rocks glass with one large cube. So it's already sitting in there waiting for me to make the cocktail. I'm going to use a Yari or a mixing glass for this one because it's a stirred cocktail. We're putting in 3 different booze ingredients. And so we want to make sure that we stir to dilute, stir to chill, but we don't need to shake and agitate the alcohol because there's no like lemon juice or citric acid or anything in there to do that. So I'm going to use Knob Creek Rye for this one. This is 100 proof. It's got oomph, lots and lots of oomph. But our rye mash bill, so when we talk about bourbon versus rye, we, as bourbon drinkers, look back to 1964 where the standards of identity were signed into law by Lyndon B. Johnson. So that was kind of what made bourbon bourbon. It had to be at least 51% corn. It had to be made in the United States, and we can go through all the rules if y'all want to. But with rye, it has to be at least 51% rye in order to be considered rye. And so a lot of times rye whiskey goes to 95 or 100% rye. And rye is an aggressive grain because it's spicy. So a lot of times when people taste rye for the first time, it's overly spicy on their palate, and they're just like, I'm used to the sweetness of bourbon. This isn't for me, right? But with Knob Creek Rye and even Jim Beam Rye, we use what I like to call a Kentucky style rye, which is not a real term. I just made it up. All right. So, but Kentucky style rye essentially means that we're going to use corn as a secondary flavoring grain to our rye. So the corn sweetness is going to balance out the spice of the rye. And then we use the malted barley to finish, the enzymatic processes and everything that we need to do for fermentation. So if we're looking at this, it's going to have less of that spiciness. It's still there, but it's going to be counterbalanced by that wonderful corn sweetness as well. So I really enjoy Knob Creek Rye in all of my classics. So when I'm talking Old Fashioned, Manhattan, Boulevardier, any of those that are very booze forward, I always go with Knob Creek Rye as kind of my first choice. So now that I've told you all of that, we are going to put, for me, this is my recipe of a Boulevardier, 2 parts of our Knob Creek Rye in there. All right, and then the next thing that goes in is our sweet vermouth. And I have chosen to use Carpano Antica. This is one of my favorites. It is a bit more on the expensive side of things, but especially in this cocktail, I really enjoy the silkiness of it, the sweetness of it, that a lot of other sweet vermouths don't actually have. And because I use it in cocktails in small amounts, I feel justified in the fact that I purchased one that's a little bit more expensive. But Dolin would work really well in this as well. Any of your favorite sweet vermouths. I am going to use 0.75 parts of my sweet vermouth here. And then the last piece of it is going to be my Campari. All right. So Campari is going to be a bit bitter on the palate. So it's going to balance out, just like the Knob Creek Rye, right? We want to have that little bit of bitterness and spiciness. It's going to come from something like the Campari. And then we want to have that sweetness like the corn, but coming from our sweet vermouth. So this cocktail just kind of makes itself. We're going to put 0.75 parts in here as well, right there on top. And then that Campari, because of its redness, gives it this really beautiful color. Hopefully y'all can see. My lights are so weird when it comes to shining off stuff.
We love the red cocktail around here, so.
Right? Perfect. All right. I have 1 large cube here. It's got a little bit of styrofoam on it, so we're going to take that off. And I'm going to stir with that. So I'm going to stir a little bit longer than somebody who's, say, using something like their kitchen ice, right, that came out of your refrigerator. When we're stirring, we want to make sure that we put the back of the spoon against the side of the glass. It sits between your 2 fingers here, and it's all a wrist motion. Okay, so and my fingers are really just holding it. My wrist is what's swinging it around. So I'm going to continue to do this. Like I said, mine's going to be a bit longer. If y'all are doing it at home, it will probably be about 8 to 10 seconds. I'm going to do mine for about 20 until I start to see a chill on the outside of the glass here. Now, if I'm using a coupe glass for this, I want to make sure that my coupe glass has been chilled in the freezer, or I've put water and ice in there, and then I dump that water and ice out first before I strain it in. And the reason for that is because this generally isn't going to be served over ice. If it's sitting in a coupe glass, that makes it really hard to drink it. You get clumps in the face with a little bit of ice. So you want to make sure that it's as chilled as it can be for as long as it can be. But today I'm putting it over a large rock because I know that it's going to dilute slow. And for me, when I'm sipping a Boulevardier, I actually prefer to have a little bit of that dilution as I sip. Like I said, it's a pretty booze forward cocktail. And when we're talking summer cocktails, we want it to be sessionable and a little bit easier going down, right? Okay, so we've got our glass here with our cube. We're gonna take our strainer, our Hawthorne strainer. You've got this little tab here. You wanna use that to push forward just because it doesn't always secure itself inside of that glass and you don't wanna spill that hard-earned cocktail that you just created. We're gonna pour it right over that rock. Again, you can do a rock or you can do it in that coupe that's chilled. Beautiful red cocktail. And then the last piece of it is gonna be taking your lemon peel. So I have just taken a lemon and taken just the skin off of it, right? There's no meat on the inside. I don't want any of the lemon actually. All I want is the oils that are coming from this. So real technical, y'all, hamburger style, right? Not hot dog style, hamburger style. You're gonna hold it with the lemon peel, the outside of the lemon towards your glass, and you're just gonna express it right over the top. You'll be able to smell lemon immediately. And then you can feel it. It's gotten oily on the outside of the skin. That's where your lemon oils are coming from. I want to take those lemon oils and put them on the outside of the glass. And just as we were talking about before with the thyme, that aromatic is going to lend this beautiful lemon fragrance to the cocktail that you just had. And if you want to get real fancy, you can kind of twist it a little bit. There we go. Set it right in there. And there you have it, your Boulevardier. Cheers.
Cheers to that. That is beautiful. You made me think of one of the pre-submitted questions we got, Beth. And that was, or the question was, what bourbon is best for a Kentucky Mule and what about an old fashioned?
Okay, so it depends on what you want, right? And what you're looking to sip on. For me personally, when I'm drinking those two drinks, my Mule is generally Jim Beam Black, 86 proof, goes perfectly well with ginger beer, a little bit of lime juice. My favorite. Even if I do a bourbon and ginger, it's typically going to be that Jim Beam Black 86 proof. It's just, that's my favorite sweet spot for that cocktail. I know that when I really need it, I guess I could go up to something like a Knob Creek at 100 proof. But again, sessionable, easy sipper when I think of a Mule, and that's going to be Jim Beam Black for me. Old fashioned. It's nothing wrong with like an 80 proof or an 86 proof or a 90, 94 proof old fashioned. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. For me though, when I'm in the mindset of drinking an old fashioned, I'm typically going 100 proof or above. That's just where I sit. So I look at things depending on where I am. Sometimes it's an old granddad bonded old fashioned. Sometimes it's an old granddad 114. Sometimes it is a Knob Creek or a Baker's. And if I'm really having a week, it's a Booker's old fashioned. But I will say your bitters is a fun way. I'm trying to see if I have my bitters still. Bitters is a really fun way to switch up your old fashions as well. So if you are trying to play around, you can switch up your simple syrups. So we talked blueberry simple syrup before. That would make a beautiful old fashioned with some whiskey barrel bitters in there. I did a Booker's old fashioned and I used these fig and cinnamon bitters, and it was one of the best old fashions that I had ever had. So yeah, just playing around with those. Decide what kind of mood you're in, you know, how hefty you want that old fashioned to be, and then just start playing around too, because the way that you like a Jim Beam Black old fashioned, it could be with your orange and Angostura bitters, but you do a Baker's old fashioned and you really like, you know, whiskey barrel bitters and cranberry bitters or something like that, where, you know, each one's a little bit different.
I love that. Thank you. I took notes while you were saying that.
No problem.
I got my notes. And I'm going to go ahead and ask one more of the pre-submitted questions right now too. And that was, what are some must-have ingredients and tools to always have on hand for beverage recipes?
Perfect question. So if you want to make cocktails at home, literally what you need is your shaker tin and a glass. And it doesn't have to look like this. It can be one of the martini shaker tins that has like a smaller top on it. But I will say that this one is my favorite because then you don't necessarily need a mixing glass as well. You can use this as a mixing glass. And so you can do shaken and stirred cocktails when it comes to that setup. You can always have a Yari. I like them, especially if you're, entertaining people or doing something a little bit fancier. Having something like this just elevates the cocktail before you even make it, right? So if you want to get extra fancy, not necessary, but they do exist. And they're usually just called glass mixing glasses. Yari is a specific brand, so it's kind of like Kleenex tissue type situation. I would also say you want a jigger. So jiggers are important because, like you said before, following a recipe, right? It's okay to wing it, but honestly, even some of the most experienced bartenders aren't great at counting in their head for how much they're putting in. So, I mean, unless you've tried it and you're just a natural at it, I would suggest having a jigger, just because it makes it that much easier. Every single time you know that you're making the same recipe and it's perfect down to a T. This one right here is a 1/2 ounce and an ounce, but they do come in 1.5 ounces, 1 ounce, or 1 1/4 and 0.75, 2 and 1. So always know what ones you have. And if you start to get more, it just makes it easier for your measurements, right? Instead of having to like on this one I used today, I did 0.75. I just know where the line is, right? And then the last 2 things that you really need are going to be a strainer. So it doesn't have to be this heavy duty. Strainers come in most of the cocktail kits. And if this is a Hawthorne strainer is the particular type. And then a spoon. And you want to have a cocktail spoon. There's my hair. Sorry about that. You want to have a cocktail spoon that has this braided piece in the middle. It doesn't have to have the fork on the other side, but the braided piece in the middle, because that's how it smoothly goes around the cocktail glass as you're stirring, versus something like a teaspoon that's really clunky all the way around. And then it never hurts to have things like a paring knife, like this guy right here, or a second strainer. So this is a fine strainer for things like mint juleps or things that have fresh juices in them that have pulp. And when you're pouring it into your cocktail, you want to catch, like, say, the mint leaves that you shook in there and the pulp from the juice so that it's not a chewy cocktail. Nice to have. Those are also pretty easy to find. If you want a vegetable peeler, if you'd rather do that instead of a knife to take some of the peel off of your stuff. I struggle with these. These are more dangerous to me than a really sharp knife is. But yeah, so those are things that I would say would be absolutely necessary if you're going to start making cocktails at home and you want to make it easier on yourself. That being said, you can do any of this with any of the stuff that you have. Trust me, we've done it. I had my friends, we were trying to do quarantine cocktails with just what you had at home. And she didn't go to her storage unit to get anything. And she strained a drink through a spatula. So you can do anything if you put your mind to it.
I love the creativity. That's awesome. And no chewy cocktails. No chewy cocktails. I got it.
That's my preference. I will ask people, like, I've had people bring me cocktails before with like mint and like a little mint island of floaty sogginess. And I'm like, this is delicious, but can we just like fine strain it real fast? Because I can't. It's a texture thing. It's real weird for me. So
cool. Well, I think we have one more cocktail. Let's get to it.
Yes. All right. So the last cocktail is a paper plane. This is my absolute favorite cocktail for summer, spring, anytime that I can drink it. May 26th is actually National Paper Plane Day. It's for the ones that you throw. I made it the cocktail day. I did a whole video series on it. I tried to make a paper plane like out of paper. I'm very terrible at it. It's about what I did in first grade. I haven't advanced at all. But the cocktail in and of itself, I love. It's equal parts, so it's really easy to remember. If you want to do 0.75 parts of each one, for my glass, I have to, because this is a smaller coupe glass. Typically, if I was making a larger cocktail or I had a larger glass, I would do 1 part of each of the ingredients. So again, makes it very simple to remember. This has been in the freezer, so I'm not going to go ahead and pre-chill it, even though it's not super cold right now. Y'all didn't need to know that, but there you go. All right, so for this cocktail, you're going to need 4 things. You're going to need your bourbon. My favorite for this cocktail is your Old Granddad Bonded 100 proof. I think it just carries really well with the rest of it. You need Aperol. You need Amaro Nonino, which is this guy right here. This is Amaro. You can use different types of Amaro if you want to. Again, like, this is my absolute favorite. I would drink this directly out of the bottle or on the rocks. It's one of the most delicious things that I've ever tasted. So I always have it on hand. It is a little bit hard to find. It depends on where you are. It's also a little bit expensive. So again, you're only using 0.75 or 1 part most of the time when you're using it, or a bar spoon. That's about all that cocktails really call for. So it does go a really long way. And this is my favorite in a paper plane. Again, you can use other Amaros, but they tend to have a bit more bitterness to them, where this one is a bit sweeter. All right, so I told you all of those things. You also need your fresh squeezed lemon juice. All right, so we're gonna put it into our glass first. We build in a glass, we shake in a tin. And the reason for that is we wanna make sure that we see everything going into this glass. If I was behind the bar making a cocktail for you, you would always wanna see what was going into it, right? That's part of the charm of it. If I'm making a cocktail at home, let's be honest, I don't touch all these bottles all the time. So I wanna make sure that there's no like gnats or anything in it, or, you know, and I'm seeing exactly what's going in there, that the cork didn't start to disintegrate and fall in. You wanna be able to see all of those things when you're making a cocktail, because you don't want that in your cocktail, right? So typically you're gonna go from the cheapest ingredient that you're putting into the most expensive ingredient. For me today, that is going to be, honestly, my whiskey is the least expensive of the things that I'm putting in this cocktail. And that's another reason why I love Old Granddad Bonded, because it's got that 100 proof, amazing, delicious, like, this is what I drink a lot of the time, y'all, especially when I'm going out to places. If you're a shot and a beer kind of person, this is one of my favorites to do. But we are gonna do, like I said, 0.75 of each of these ingredients. So that's gonna go in first. And we don't ever call whiskey that's at a great price cheap, right? Because price has nothing to do with it. It's great value. And I don't know about y'all, but I'm still in the college mentality of great value is where it's at. So
I
whiskey,
absolutely love that tip. I love that a lot.
I learned how to make quesadillas in the toaster oven in college, and I learned that whiskey can be great even when it's not super expensive. So tips of the day. All right, next we're gonna go with our Aperol. All right, and this Aperol is going to be, again, 0.75 parts right there on top. So you can already tell this, the color of this cocktail is gonna be bright and beautiful and reddish pink, right? It's not gonna be as red as the Campari and the Boulevardier. And then next up, we're gonna use that Amaro Nonino. Again, 0.75. So far, we've added our whiskey, which is going to give us the oomph of the cocktail. We've added the Aperol, which is going to give a little bit of orange, but also a little bit of bitterness to it. We're adding the Amaro Nonino, which also has a little bit of bitterness, but also a sweetness to it. And then we want to offset that with some citrus. So that's where our lemon juice is going to come in. And we're going to put 0.75 in there. So that's just going to really brighten it up. All right. We were talking ice molds. These ice molds I have for my highball. So they're like little sticks that we're gonna shake with today. Right there. All right, and when you wanna shake your cocktails, you take it from your glass where you've made that cocktail, you pour it directly into your shaker tin, give it a pop, all right? And then you do like the Dairy Queen check, right? You wanna make sure that it's not gonna pop off. And then you wanna take the seal where the glass meets the tin, and you're gonna wrap your hands around both, okay? You wanna make sure that even, you know, for some reason the suction doesn't keep up, that you don't go like this and douse yourself or like hit yourself in the face with a glass. It's happened to me on a multitude of occasions, y'all. I've gotten a bloody lip from a glass that hit me in the face. So if it happens to you, don't feel bad. Just hope that it's not being recorded, because mine was. All right, so you wanna put your elbows up high and you wanna put the glass next to your ear. So it should be about, you know, ear height. And then all you wanna do is make sure that the ice hits the bottom here and the bottom here, back and forth. So the only rules about shaking is shake it hard and shake it with a smile. It's gonna be loud, so I apologize. All right. We're gonna do this for about 8 seconds. All right, and then because that seal's still there, you wanna pop it. So it's gonna break that seal, you get all of that goodness out of there. All right, then you're gonna take your strainer, right there on top, take your chilled glass. So beautiful, and it smells so good. And if y'all can tell, I've made this cocktail a million times in this glass, so I know exactly how many drops it can take. All right, get to the last drop. And then I have grapefruit, because I love the aromatic of grapefruit with my paper plane. So I'm just going to take a swath. Again, you don't want any of the meat. You just want that beautiful oil coming from the skin, hamburger style, making sure that the grapefruit actual outside of the peel is over the glass. Express. Oh, it smells so good. And then same idea as before, all the way around. And then make it nice and pretty. Put it right there on top. And there you have a paper plane. Ciao.
Cheers. That is beautiful. Wow. I hope no one was watching my face because I was literally like, wow, mouth open because I was so impressed.
Yay.
The shaking was amazing.
Do you want to hear a backstory on why I shake like that? Because it's really
Please.
fun. So as a competitive person, I don't like not being able to do things, or if people think that I haven't done them properly. So I was at the bar. I had just kind of really started on my journey of being a craft bartender. And there was a guy who ran some restaurants here in Louisville who was sitting across from me at the bar. And he was like, what are you doing? Why are you shaking like that? Why are you stirring like that? Why? Oh, he was just like so appalled at what I was doing. So I went home and I was like, okay, how am I going to fix this? So my shake is from a shake weight. I bought a shake weight at Walgreens and I learned how to shake with a shake weight right here. So like if you ever watch my shake, it goes up and down like a shake weight and my pinkies come up because I can't keep them under control. And so that's where the shake comes from. And my stir, I literally just put ice and water into a bunch of mixing glasses. And I sat in front of the TV and mixed with both hands until I could do it seamlessly with both hands. And so the next time that guy came in, promise he had no idea that he had said these things to me that just like affected me for the rest of my life. I was just like, look at this, look at this. And he was like, what? So that's my story on why.
I will admit, when you were doing it, I thought of a shake weight. So you got your signature shakedown. I love it. You're getting lots of compliments in the chat about how beautiful that drink looks. Christy wants to know who's going to drink all these drinks you're making.
Don't judge. Me.
Good.
I'm done. This is the end of my day. I've been on phone calls since 8 a.m. So yeah, I'm going to sip. I'll put this one in the freezer because it's diluted a little bit. So that lemonade will get nice and slushy. That Boulevardier will go down real quick, and so will this paper plane. So
yes. We did have one more pre-submitted question. If anyone else has any final questions, feel free to share those in the chat. We talked about it a little bit with the Kentucky Mule and Old Fashioned, but somebody did ask, how do you use different bourbons and different cocktails, and what about rye?
So it really, like I said before, it just depends on what you're looking for from the cocktail, right? You want to have something that maybe is a little bit more booze forward or has a bit more of a kick, then you could be looking at a rye that's higher in proof. If you want something that's a bit more sessionable, then you would look towards something that was probably more of a traditional mash bill for bourbon, so just that traditional recipe, and probably towards the lower proof. So for me in my portfolio, I cover so many different brands in American whiskey.
Yes,
so I have I have everything on the one end of like Basil Hayden at 80 proof. I have Jim Beam at 80 proof. I have Jim Beam Black at 86 and some of the other Jim Beams in that portfolio, like Double Oak and things that live in that space as well. If I want to go up to Devil's Cut, that gets a little bit higher in proof. Our Jim Beam single barrel that just came out is 108 proof. I've got Knob Creek at 100. I've got Baker's at 107. I've got Booker's at cask strength, which is anywhere generally between 125 and 130. So I can play, I mean, Old Granddad's, Old Crow, Old Overhold is coming out with a new recipe, and it's going to be a little bit higher in proof as well. Old Tub is about to hit the market, so you can see it over my shoulder. This is the old bottle of Old Tub. It's had a couple makeovers, and now is going to be July 1st will be out in market as a 750 milliliter. So the recipe of what we were making prior to Jim Beam will be available for folks to have with a non-chill filter. So
when did
got a whole lot going
come
on.
out?
July 1st.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah. So I have the gambit of all the different ones to choose from. And so for me, it's just been trial and error and knowing each of the brands that I like, where they fall in that spectrum. If I know that cocktail, like I said, with my my paper plane, I like that 100 proof. It's just right there at that perfect balance to break up the sweetness and the tartness and, you know, a little bit of that bitterness. I'm going for something that's going to be like a highball, so having that +1 of my lemonade or my soda water or whatever that might be, I'm probably going to look at 80 to 86 proof. But that's just a personal preference. It's totally up to what you like.
Hey Beth, we have a question that came in on the Facebook Live feed. Daphne would like to know if you have any recommendations for a bourbon and champagne cocktail.
Yes, I have a couple different ones. So for me, when it comes to champagne, I want a more delicate whiskey. So I'm going to look at most likely a Basil Hayden for that. So for me, I could do something like a Seelbach, which is going to be your Basil Hayden, a little bit of orange liqueur. So we've got like 03 in my label. You've got things like Grand Marnier and stuff like that that you can use. And then you want to top it with your champagne. You can throw some bitters in there if you want to. A little bit of like a lemon peel or an orange peel, and that would be a nice, bright, delicious champagne cocktail. Not champagne, but rosé. I've got Basil Hayden, blueberry simple, and then you put in black tea, lemon juice, and top it with rosé. And then you've got a beautiful punch that you can sip that's super easy, bright, and then you've got that bubbly rosé on top. But again, for me, Basil Hayden kind of is the brand that I use for the wines, the champagnes, the rosés.
Sounds awesome.
That does sound absolutely amazing, and I apologize for my internet going out. So
Oh, you're fine.
I was back just in time to hear about how delicious that sounded. I'm going to ask one last question. And we sort of had our summer theme tonight, and all of these I think are perfect for summer. Any final general tips that you might have? Just, you gave the tip earlier of using the glass that was a little bit thicker. Any other stuff like that that you think is helpful when somebody might be drinking a drink outside?
I think that the biggest stuff is knowing the ice and the containers that you're using and where you're going to be. I don't know if I did say this, your sweet vermouth should always go in the refrigerator. Once it's open, put it in the fridge. I always want to tell people that. They don't know that. And it's a fortified wine. So if it's not in the refrigerator, it's going to go bad and spoil really easily. And so people still drink it and they're like, I hate sweet vermouth. No, you don't. You hate fermented wine that's gone bad. So make sure that you keep your sweet vermouth in the fridge at all times, and it'll last for a couple of weeks. Simple syrup will last for about 2 weeks. So know the length of the ingredients that you're using. If you open containers of stuff, just make sure that you're aware of that, because a lot of times, especially when it comes to alcohol forward things, we anticipate that they're going to be okay for longer than they actually are, right? So knowing that your ingredients that you're putting in are still within the standard of being healthy and okay to consume. Know your ice. So if you're using the ice that's coming out of your refrigerator, know that that's going to dilute faster. If you're using ice that came out of a machine, like say at a gas station, that's also going to dilute faster. If you're using the larger cubes, it's going to dilute slower, and it's going to take a longer time for it to chill, and it's also going to take a longer time for it to melt down and dilute whatever you're putting in there. If you're making a mint julep, go to Sonic and get their ice, because it's the best ice you can get for that without having to hammer away using like a Lewis bag and mallet. Keep your own herbs at home. It inspires you to do more cocktail stuff. And then, when you make prettier cocktails, you want to consume them more, right? Because not only are they delicious, but they look nice. Instagram is the way that we communicate with people. So you can always Instagram those cocktails. And people are interested, especially more now. We've always had your on-premise, right? Your bars and restaurants, and your off-premise with your liquor stores. And now we have this thing that's kind of like a home premise, right? Where people are at home doing all of this elevated cocktail creation, because we didn't have the ability to go to bars and have these bartenders. So a lot of people have educated themselves at home. So if you have all of those tools and you're able to, make those cocktails and make them beautiful and delicious, and then share them with other people, it's just another way for us to connect and really kind of teach people how to do that next thing, right? Yes, we love to consume these beautiful, delicious cocktails. Let's talk about how to make them. And then honestly, the more people know, the higher standards that other people are going to be held to when we open back up as a world, and we have these cocktails. And so we're going to get better cocktails, and we're going to get more, imaginative cocktails, and we're going to be able to talk and communicate with our hospitality folks about what we've learned and how much we like. And it's just going to elevate, this space as a way for people to communicate and connect. So I think it's important for, if you're interested, to move forward and play and figure out what you like.
I love that.
This is what you finish with.
Cheers to that.
Cheers. There's nothing bad about finishing with a delicious cocktail. I mean, there's a lot of experiments that can go bad. Like, I can cook and burn things and then I don't get to like eat it. If I create a cocktail, I can just make a bigger cocktail until it's balanced out. And then I have something delicious. So
that's a philosophy to live by, in my opinion.
I did a pairing the other night and dropped a baguette in my oven and I'm still burnt from it. And I was like, this is why I don't cook for things. Like, this is why I don't cook for a living. I make cocktails because you can't burn those.
I love that. I love that. Well, thank you so much, Beth. This has been awesome. Thanks to everyone who is watching on Zoom and has asked a couple questions and joined us, and then everyone on Facebook Live as well. I am going to give another plug for our Young Alumni Month. We do have our trivia night next Wednesday night at 8 p.m. So it's a little bit later in the night, so you can have dinner, have a couple cocktails, and then join us. We'll do that on Zoom. And Kelsey is sharing that, or has shared that link in the chat. And then also we will send a post-event email with a survey out and a recap of this event, so everyone can keep an eye out for that. Let us know what you thought. Let us know what else you would like to see from us. We're planning to do virtual events for some time, so let us know what else you would like to see. Thanks again to Beth from Beam Suntory for sharing all these awesome brands and how to make these awesome cocktails, raising her L with us tonight. And we'll do a little cheers to all of that and a go Cards. And thank you all, and we will see you soon. Thanks, Beth.
Thanks, y'all. Take care. I appreciate you.
Thank you.